The story opens with Tom starting to introduce himself. 8 years ago, Tom was a police officer, but then he decided to quit and switch to crime scene cleaning. In his line of work, Tom is known to be very skilled. He even created a special chemical that can clean a crime scene so thoroughly that it leaves absolutely no trace. At home, Tom's life is pretty simple. He only lives with his daughter, Rose. His wife passed away a long time ago, so since then, Tom has been raising Rose on his own. One day, after getting home from work, Tom spends a little time with Rose. Like usual, she asks how his day was. Tom casually says, "It was a good day." Then, without realizing it, he falls asleep. The next day, Tom gets a new job. His task is to clean a house. When he arrives, he finds the door locked, but there's a note telling him the key is hidden under a plant pot. Tom takes the key and goes inside. As soon as he enters, Tom sees the house covered in bloodstains everywhere. Following his usual procedure, he starts documenting everything. He uses a recorder to describe the situation he sees, while taking photos of every corner as evidence. After everything is documented, Tom begins cleaning. The job takes quite a while, but eventually, the entire house is cleaned, with no trace left. After he gets home, Rose greets him and says she has prepared dinner. Turns out she found her mother's recipe book and tried cooking on her own, but Tom doesn't really respond to it. He just goes straight to take a shower. After that, they eat together. Rose mentions that she didn't go to school that day because she felt her teacher wasn't teaching well. Tom immediately scolds her and says that no matter the reason, she still has to go to school every day. After that, Tom goes to sleep. The next morning, as he's about to leave for work, Tom puts his hand in his pocket and finds something that surprises him. The house key from yesterday is still with him. Tom realizes he forgot to return it. Without thinking much, Tom goes back to the house. But when he gets there, he sees a woman inside. The woman is the homeowner, Ann Norcutt. Tom tries to explain that he came to return the key, but Ann looks confused and asks what key he's talking about and what he was actually doing in her house. At that moment, Tom immediately feels that something isn't right. He quickly changes the subject, pretending he might have gotten the wrong address, then leaves. When he gets to the office, Tom starts investigating on his own. He discovers something shocking. The police never actually gave him that job. That means someone used his services without permission. Now it's serious. Because Tom already cleaned a crime scene that should have been important evidence, he could now be considered involved in covering up a murder. Feeling threatened, Tom gathers all the evidence he had documented and stores it safely. Not long after, Eddie calls him. Tom asks him to meet that night to have a drink together, and Eddie agrees. Before leaving, Tom spends some time again with Rose. She talks about her mom, who used to take her to the movies, and also about an old story when Tom and his wife went to Mexico for a wedding. Rose even mentions that she was born 9 months after that trip. But Tom doesn't want to remember that past, so he chooses to go meet Eddie. When they meet, Tom sees news on TV saying that Ann's husband, John, is missing. From that, Tom starts connecting everything. He begins to suspect that John might have been murdered in that house and someone intentionally used him to clean the crime scene. Tom then asks Eddie, who is a police officer, about John's case. Eddie starts explaining what he knows. Not long after, the detective handling the case, Jim, also arrives and adds more information. Jim explains that John used to have a good relationship with the police commissioner, but that relationship turned bad. John was also scheduled to testify for the DEA, but before that could happen, he suddenly disappeared. After the conversation ends, they get ready to go home. At that time, it's raining very heavily. Seeing that Eddie is already quite drunk, Tom offers to drive him home. After dropping Eddie off, Tom goes straight back to his house. Nothing happens that night, but the atmosphere still feels uneasy because of everything Tom just learned. The next morning, as soon as he arrives at the office, Tom is surprised. Ann Norcutt is already there, as if she's been waiting for him. She immediately approaches and bluntly asks what Tom actually does for a living. Tom tries to explain his business, how he cleans crime scenes. But Anne doesn't stop there. She asks something more specific, whether he has ever worked at her house. Tom immediately lies. He says that he only works for the police and only goes to locations if it's an official assignment from them. But Anne doesn't seem convinced, and her attitude shows that she feels something is being hidden. Seeing the situation getting uncomfortable, Tom changes the subject.
Oh, no, of course not.
Not long after, Tom tells Anne to leave, saying he's busy and doesn't have time. Eventually, Anne leaves, and Tom tries to go back to work, like usual. Soon after, Tom gets a new job. When he arrives at the location to clean, Eddie also shows up. In the middle of their conversation, Eddie brings up something that makes the situation serious. He says that the police checked John's apartment but didn't find anything suspicious. There was only one thing that stood out: the trace of cleaning chemicals, and it's exactly the same type that Tom usually uses. Eddie also reminds him that he seemed very curious about John's case yesterday. From that, Eddie starts to get suspicious and asks Tom to be honest. Finally, Tom confesses. He tells everything from the beginning about the message he received that seemed to come from the police and how he cleaned the house without knowing it wasn't an official job. Eddie then asks why he didn't report it right away. Tom explains that the situation is too dangerous. If someone really managed to make John disappear, then he could be the next target, especially if there's involvement from the police, like they talked about earlier. According to Tom, reporting it without knowing who to trust could actually put him in danger. Eddie then reminds him of something important. Before cleaning a crime scene, Tom always documents everything, from photos to detailed notes. That could be very strong evidence. Tom confirms that he still has all the evidence. Eddie suggests that he should keep it safe. If something happens, it could be the only thing protecting him. During the conversation, Tom also opens up about his dark past. He admits that he once killed someone while in prison and even committed murder for money in the past. But Eddie doesn't really respond to that. He just tells Tom not to stay trapped in his past.
It's just you and me.
After that, Tom goes home. There, he finds Rose in an upset state. She vents her feelings, saying that Tom is almost never home and always leaves her alone. Tom, who is already tired, responds harshly. He scolds her for not doing her homework and for still thinking about her mother. He says that she has to accept the fact that her mother is gone. Rose's response cuts deeper. She says at least someone still remembers her mother. Hearing that, Tom falls silent, but it's clear he doesn't like what she said. The next day, the scene shifts to a playground. Anne is seen with children, trying to spend time like usual. In the middle of that, she briefly notices a van with Tom inside, but as soon as Tom realizes he's been seen, he immediately drives away. Not long after that, Tom arrives at his office. There, Detective Jim is already waiting with his partner. Jim gets straight to the point. He explains that when they checked John's apartment, they found some suspicious chemicals. Since Tom is known to be an expert in that area, they want to match the samples. Tom stays calm. He asks his secretary to bring out records of the chemicals he usually uses. During the conversation, Jim casually asks about Tom's whereabouts on the day of the incident. But Tom doesn't answer directly and instead changes the subject. As soon as he gets the chance, Tom immediately leaves toward his van. He takes an envelope containing all the evidence from the crime scene that he had been hiding there, then moves it to a safer place. The story then shifts to a field, where Rose is playing soccer. Tom and Eddie stand on the sidelines watching. In between, they start talking about John's case again. Tom asks about the progress of the investigation. Eddie explains that the police still consider John just a missing person. Nothing has really pointed to murder yet, so the case is still moving slowly. Meanwhile, on the field, Rose is playing really well, but Tom is too focused on talking to Eddie and doesn't really pay attention to his own daughter. That makes Rose disappointed, even though she doesn't show it right away.
It was great.
After getting home, Rose starts doing her schoolwork. Tom comes over and tries to ask how her homework is going, but she answers in a cold tone. Suddenly, she asks a question that changes the mood instantly. She asks who killed her mother and who that person is. Tom goes silent for a moment, but in the end, he says one name, Danielle.
Hurt us anymore.
Sometime later, Tom decides to find Anne and meet her directly. They meet, secretly, at a church. The meeting starts cautiously. Tom makes sure that Anne isn't being watched or wearing a wire. She says she's not. Tom then gets straight to the point. He says that he knows Anne is involved in this case, including the house that was cleaned. She doesn't deny it. Tom then asks who actually ordered all of it, but he also admits that he still doesn't know who set him up. Tom asks for Anne's help. He wants to know what John was actually going to reveal in his testimony. She doesn't explain right away, but says she can show him something. They then go to Anne's office. There, she reveals an important secret. John had been keeping a secret notebook that contains a list of corrupt police badge numbers. When Tom sees the list, he is immediately shocked. His own badge number is on it.
At least 10 years. Well, who was the other man?
In a panic, Tom immediately goes to Eddie and tells him everything. Eddie gives a pretty harsh suggestion. According to him, evidence like that should be destroyed. If the notebook is found, all suspicion will immediately point to Tom. People could assume that John was going to testify against him, and that becomes a motive for murder. Tom becomes even more pressured. After that, he goes back to Anne and tries to help her. She admits that she's afraid of being alone and needs a safe place. In the end, Tom takes Anne to the house of an old acquaintance, Miguel. There, they have dinner together in a fairly calm atmosphere. After dinner, Tom and Anne sit outside and start talking more openly. Anne talks about her past. She was once pregnant, but John didn't want the child, and in the end, she lost the baby. Tom also shares his own story. A few years ago, someone broke into his house and tried to attack his wife. When Tom fought back, the intruder shot him right in the chest. At that time, Rose was only 6 years old and witnessed everything. Since that incident, she has never truly been able to forget what happened to her mother. That story makes Anne feel sad too, because she begins to understand the burden Tom and his family have been carrying. That night, after everything, Tom decides to leave on his own. But on the way, the situation changes drastically. A police car stops his van on the side of the road. It's not a normal check. One of the officers, who turns out to be corrupt, immediately attacks him. Tom is beaten brutally until his face is badly bruised. Injured, Tom still forces himself to drive home. As soon as he arrives, Rose panics when she sees him. She quickly grabs medicine and tries to treat his wounds while repeatedly asking what actually happened. Tom stays silent. He doesn't want to explain anything. That attitude only makes Rose more anxious. Her emotions rise, and she starts yelling out of frustration. Tom finally snaps too. He yells back, asking why she wants to know those things, because in his opinion, it will only make her more disturbed. Rose can't hold back anymore. She cries and says she's afraid what happened to her mother will happen to Tom. That fear is something she has been keeping to herself all this time. In the middle of that, she also tells the truth. She admits that she lied earlier. She actually didn't have any schoolwork she had secretly been looking for and reading old files about her mother's case. Hearing that, Tom immediately tells her to return everything. But Rose is already too upset. She starts venting her emotions by throwing things around her room. Seeing the situation is out of control, Tom chooses to leave the house. The next day, Tom gets a message from Anne. She says that the morgue contacted her to come identify a body. Without hesitation, Tom says he'll go with her and is already on the way. They meet at the morgue. As Anne prepares to do the identification, Tom talks to the medical examiner. From that, he learns something unexpected. The doctor apparently knew John personally and knew his medical history. The doctor reveals an important fact. John couldn't have children because, medically, he was infertile. That information immediately makes Tom think fast. If John couldn't have kids, then what about Anne's previous pregnancy? That means there was someone else in Anne's life. In the middle of that situation, Detective Jim suddenly walks into the room. Tom immediately acts like they don't know each other. Meanwhile, Anne finishes identifying the personal belongings and confirms that they belong to John. After leaving, Tom's mind is filled with even more suspicion. He immediately meets Eddie and tells him everything he just found out. Tom starts forming his own theory. Now, he actually suspects Anne. According to him, Anne might have been involved with another man. When John found out about the affair, a conflict happened, and that man ended up killing John. After hearing Tom's theory, Eddie immediately becomes defensive. He tells Tom to go meet Detective Jim right away, tell him everything, and hand over all the evidence. According to him, once the case is closed, Tom won't be bothered anymore. But Tom refuses. He feels that move is too risky. There are too many possibilities that he could end up being set up. Their conversation continues until Eddie accidentally says something that makes Tom realize something. There's something Eddie knows personally, not just from the investigation. Tom starts pressing him with sharper questions. Little by little, everything comes out. The truth that had been hidden finally surfaces. Eddie is actually Anne's secret boyfriend. Feeling betrayed, Tom immediately leaves and heads to Anne's house. When he arrives, he sees that Anne has already packed her things like she's about to run away. Tom corners her and demands an explanation. He asks why she did all of this and why John was killed. At first, Anne denies it and looks panicked, but Tom keeps pushing. He says that he already knows about her relationship with Eddie and is sure that the two of them are involved in the murder. He even threatens to report everything to the police if she doesn't tell the truth. Finally, Anne stops lying. She calls Eddie and asks about the house key. Eddie casually says that he already threw it away. From that, everything becomes clearer to Tom. There's no more doubt that Eddie is the killer. But the situation isn't that simple. Anne turns things around and threatens Tom. She says that if he talks to the police, he'll be dragged into it too, because he was the one who cleaned the crime scene. Tom doesn't care about that threat. He chooses to leave because the most important thing for him now is Rose's safety. Tom immediately goes home to take Rose somewhere safe, but she refuses to leave and insists on staying in the house. Time is running out, so Tom is forced to leave her for a while and goes to meet Detective Jim to give him clues that point to Eddie. On the other hand, Eddie has already found out about Tom's plan. He goes to Tom's house, then calls and threatens him. If Tom doesn't come home right away, Rose will be killed. Tom panics and immediately rushes back as fast as he can. As soon as he arrives, Tom goes inside and tells Rose to hide. Without waiting, he immediately attacks Eddie. A fight breaks out inside the house. In that situation, Eddie finally reveals his reason. He says that John was a cruel man. John forced Anne to get rid of their child. It wasn't a miscarriage like she had always said, but a forced abortion. Eddie admits he wanted to build a family with Anne, but everything was destroyed because of John. That's what made him kill John. And to cover his tracks, Eddie used Tom so that he would unknowingly clean all the evidence. Tom tries to calm things down and says that the police are on their way. He suggests that Eddie turn himself in so his sentence could be lighter. But Eddie refuses to back down. He pulls out a gun and points it at Tom. According to him, Tom is the only person who can bring him down. Outside, sirens start to be heard. The police are getting closer. Eddie becomes more panicked, but also more desperate. He decides to kill Tom before everything ends. Just as Eddie is about to pull the trigger, a gunshot is suddenly heard. The bullet hits Eddie in the head, and he immediately falls. It turns out Rose was the one who fired the shot. She took Tom's spare gun and shot to save her father. Tom immediately runs to Rose, hugs her as she's still shaking, then slowly takes the gun from her hands. Not long after, the police arrive and fill the house. Tom meets Detective Jim and hands over all the evidence he has been keeping, including John's secret notebook. After seeing all the evidence, Jim says that Tom was only a small part of this bigger plan. He makes sure Tom's name won't appear in the official report. That means Tom is free. In the final part, Tom's co-worker, Miguel, is seen cleaning the house from blood and chaos, just like the kind of work Tom usually does. The story ends.